Hello to everybody out there who's watching this. My name is Rabbi Pinchas Landis, and I'm here with a very new friend of mine, Eric Shawn, who will tell in a minute how we met through pure serendipity very recently. But first, we figured that, hey, some of you watching might know who I am. You might know who Eric is, but I'm going to hazard to guess. And as they always say, every time I guess, it's a hazard. So I'm going to hazard to guess that there are very few people watching who know both me and Eric. So we're going to start with introducing ourselves, and then we'll tell what we're trying to do over here. So Eric, who are you?
My name is Eric Shawn. First off, I'm happy to meet all of you. I am a mindset coach, personal trainer, and I am studying to be an interfaith minister.
Okay, got it. And I am Rabbi Pinchas Landis. I'm a rabbi. I'm not a pulpit rabbi. I work in Jewish education, most specifically what we call outreach education, meaning reaching out to less educated members of the Jewish community, trying to encourage them to learn more. As I'm sure you can tell even over the camera, I'm not a personal trainer. I have a very hard time even getting to the gym. But I do, my goal in life is to help people out and to help people to be better. And even though I'm not a personal trainer, as I told Eric once before, my daughter's training to be one. So at least we have one in the family.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I always say it's hard for me just to get to the gym, but anyhow, I want to tell a story about how Eric and I even connected, because it was kind of a funny, just like I said, pure serendipity, pure, I would say pure chance, but as a teacher of mine once said, a coincidence is just a miracle where the Almighty decides to remain anonymous. So I think that's what this was. One day I get a message on Facebook from Eric, and we didn't know each other. And he said that, as he just said before, that I'm studying to become a minister, and I have to interview clergy from other types of clergy, and I want to interview you to fill my quota as a rabbi. And I said, sure, let's make a time to talk. And we got on the phone a few days later, and the first question I asked for Eric before he could even interview me was, like, how'd you find me of all the rabbis? I said, quite simple. I went to Facebook, I put in rabbi, and you popped up. So. You know, all that social media engagement helps out sometimes, I guess. But you know, we had a nice conversation, and then, you know, this was probably about March. Was it? I guess right before the world shut down, probably the beginning of the quarantine. Yeah.
In March.
By the way, what grade did you get on my interview? Did you get an A?
I got an A+.
There you go. Okay. So. And that was right at the beginning of the quarantine. And then, as we all know, we're in June now, and a lot's happened since then. We've gone to COVID-19. Just as the world was starting to try and open up again, we had the terrible George Floyd tragedy in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and then the whole outgrowth of what's come from that with the protests and the riots and the call for change, and some change starting to happen, and everything that we know is going on in the world. So I was just, you know, I'll tell from my perspective, then Eric's perspective I think is even more amazing. But I just, it hit me that here I am. I'm a rabbi in the Cleveland community. I do a lot of digital content, so my rabbinic reach goes even beyond Cleveland to a certain extent. And I said, one thing I know is clear, and that's if these things are happening in the world right now, that I have to do something. I don't know what I need to do. I don't know what's effective. I don't know anything, but I need to do something. And I had an idea that, look, we use Facebook and podcasting and videos and all these things for everything under the sun. I said, let's jump online and have a conversation with someone from the African-American community and just ask that question. What are the things we could be doing right now in the world? What can the Jewish community do? What can the Black community do? What can we do for each other? And that's really where the thought came from. And then the next thing that starts going through my mind is, okay, well, who's a good candidate, so to speak, to do this? Who should I reach out to? And I started going through some old friends, some new friends, some present friends, some people from the past, people from the present. And I said, well, the guy, Eric, he was really interesting, you know, because one thing I saw is we're both active in social media. You know, we both believe in content distribution in a digital way. I said, let me reach out to Eric. And we got together for a cup of coffee, and here we are. That's from my side, but I got to hear Eric's side of it, which is even more remarkable.
I was sitting around one day and I had a meeting with my mindset coach, and we were going over some clarity things. And I said, I got to figure out a way to become more active and to get out more. And, we went through some soul searching. And the point is as soon as I got off with that meeting, I get a message from the rabbi saying, I have this idea, and I would like to share it with you and see if we can put something together. And it was, a lot of times we call them coincidences, but I think things come together exactly the way that they're supposed to, when they're supposed to. It's sort of like fate. Just like, when I got on Facebook, I think that there was a reason why we connected as opposed to somebody else connecting, So it was just very, very strange. Well, it wasn't strange. It was just a way of letting me know that this was something that I had to do. Because, you sit around and you think, what can I do? I wish I could do something. But I think a lot of times it's just a matter of taking the action of doing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. A lot of times it's just start doing, and then you figure out where it will go. And that's really what Eric and I said when we got together for a cup of coffee. I said, let's have a conversation, just talk about some of these issues, talk about them openly. It's a funny thing when we look at the Jewish community and the Black community in America in the past roughly 150 years since we've both been here. Again, the Black community has been here a little longer than the Jewish community, and it definitely came under very different circumstances. But I think about it like kind of like a roller coaster. The communities and the interplay between the communities has had its ups and its downs. Some very positive moments of working together, and unfortunately some very negative moments of being at strife. And at least for me, that blows my mind, because there's in many ways a very common shared history. Not common as in we had the same experiences, but similar experiences. And but be it as it may, it's not always the case. And even here in, I think we're lucky here in Cleveland, because I think for the most part, people do get along in Cleveland, but there are definitely places where it's not always so simple. So Eric, just give me a snapshot. You grew up here in Cleveland, right?
Yeah, and I was privileged enough to grow up in a very diverse area of Cleveland. I grew up in Cleveland Heights, and there was just a wide mixture of everybody, religion, politics, socioeconomics, all of that. And so I was able to witness a lot of different cultures. And I think I had shared this from you. 3 blocks from my house, is a Jewish community, very Orthodox Jewish community. And I drive through every day. And that was another thing that let me know that we were supposed to connect and to do this, because I was driving down the street one day and I said, I wonder how this community views all the stuff that's going on in the world right now. I would love to know. And then you reached out to me. But I think that, I was thinking earlier today, just with all what appears to be hate, and sometimes you can look at the world and you can get the idea that people hate more than they love. And I was thinking, is that true? And what I think is I think that people who hate with more passion. They hate louder. They make more noise with it. And then I always think, what is the solution to hate? And I think that it's to get to know somebody else. And that's another reason why I'm really excited about this, is because I think that this is how the world changes. We take time and we get to know each other, and we get to understand each other. We bring different cultures together. And growing up, I was very lucky to have a lot of experience with that. And it's always hard to hate what you understand, but very easy to hate what you don't.
Right.
So I think that with a lot of this, we are the epitome of what needs to happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think back to my upbringing, which also, thank God was very diverse. You reference the Cleveland Orthodox community, which is where I live, not the Cleveland Heights side, but the University Heights side. So, a mile up the road, but still part of the Orthodox community. And many of my friends and neighbors were not privileged to the diverse upbringing that I had. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and Atlanta, Georgia today is a very cosmopolitan type place in many ways, until you go a little bit outside of the cities. Then it's still a very backwards southern town, but and you live there for a little bit. So
Very true.
but my upbringing was great because while I grew up in Dunwoody, which is sort of like a mid to upper class, kind of like a Beechwood, if you will, neighborhood, a lot of Jews in that neighborhood, not a lot of diversity in the neighborhood. The experience of our family brought me a lot of different diverse experiences, and the earliest one I remember is my grandfather, who himself was a Holocaust survivor, or he left before the Holocaust, but a survivor of Nazi Germany, who got out in 1937, had a do-it-yourself 2 auto parts stores in the African American community of Atlanta. And so every time we went to, and my father worked there when we were growing up, and so every time we went to the store, it was that was and it was very much in the community, in the Black community, and the staff, besides my grandfather, my father, and my mother, was all from the African American community. And so that's where we grew up. That's where we hung out, so to speak. And there was definitely a mutual respect of not only the staff of that store, but the patrons of that store, with my father, but for sure, especially my grandfather. There was a saintly respect for him in that neighborhood and in that store. And you fast forward to high school. I was always like to become a rabbi takes a lot of gall. The Hebrew word they use is chutzpah, right? It takes a lot of gall. You got to be different. And I even in high school, I was always doing my own thing, doing things differently. And I decided kind of on a whim that I wanted to go to a magnet school in Georgia. Now, the way that the magnet schools work, at least in my county, DeKalb County, is it's one of the programs that they have to better integrate the schools. Because DeKalb County, even today, and as again, we're lucky here in University Heights, Cleveland Heights, that it is more diverse. But DeKalb County, Georgia, is not like that. It's still very racially divided, and so for years, since the 60s, since Brown versus the Board of Education, they've been trying to figure out how to integrate the schools. And one of the things they did is have these magnet programs to they put special programs in the predominantly African-American schools to try and get more white kids to go there. And I went to one of those schools. So I went to a public school growing up that had a magnet program that was 80% African-American, 20% white. When I started the school in 10th grade, I was one of 3 Jews, right? And when I graduated, I was the only Jew. So first of all, being in that diverse environment, you learn to love everybody. Also being a minority, being a minority in school was a wonderful experience. But beyond that, I was a double minority because I was not only one of the white kids, but I was the only Jew. I was like really the representative of the Jewish people. And that for me was extremely formative in me becoming a rabbi. I can honestly say I would not be a rabbi today. We would not be here today doing this. Maybe you'd be training me as either my coach or personal training or something. But we would not be here having this discussion had I not gone to that school. But it forced me as a 16-year-old to start to take my Judaism a little more seriously, because I realized that I wasn't just representing myself, but I was representing the whole Jewish people. And when people would ask me questions, I had to give a good answer, and I had to, give a good show, because I was representing a lot more than myself, representing 3,000 years of heritage. And in that school, the 3 years I was there, 10th through 12th grade, I did not experience one drop of anti-Semitism, not a drop. And it was a beautiful thing. And I think there's some of those experiences growing up that I'm lucky. So to what you said, that when there's hate, it's usually from one of 2 places. It's either you don't know the other person that you hate, right? You don't know them. You're going based on some bigotry or some preconceived notions that have been fed to you, or you had a negative experience with that group of people, right?
Right.
And neither one's fair, right? It's Neither one's fair. Like if you know, if you, God forbid, have a bad experience with a Jew, is that fair to not like the Jewish people? And if I, God forbid, have a bad experience with an African American, that's fair for me to judge all the other African Americans? No, it's not fair. Not fair at all, right? Bernie Madoff ripped off a lot of people. He was Jewish. Is it fair to blame the Jews? No. Right.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what we do here, because you know, we've Eric and I have been privileged to have these positive experiences of not being raised with bigotry and not being raised with hatred and not being raised with that. But therefore, you know, we feel like we have to be the evangelist to get out there and say, okay, now wake up, folks. You know, the guy down the block who has skin darker than yours, or the lady down the block whose husband wears a Jew cap, you know, yarmulke. They're a person just like you, right? You might have different culture, might have different life experiences, but they're a human being too.
And I think, you know, I think that we are. I was reading something a little while ago, and it's strange to me because a lot of times it seems like we're all so different, but we're really not. All of us share 99.9% of the same DNA. So it's 0.1% that separates us. You know, on a different note, I was listening to your story just then, it occurred to me how similar a lot of our experiences are. You know, I grew up until I was 9 years old, down on Huff, all Black community. Then I moved up to University Heights and went to private white schools, and I was the only Black kid in the school. And I dealt with a lot of racism, but it was very silent. It wasn't like out loud. Mm-hmm. You know, but it was very, so this was in 1970s. So a whole different world than it was now. Even in University Heights, I think that I was one of the only Black people in University Heights. That area wasn't really that diverse. Mm-hmm. But if I had not experienced that, if I had not allowed those people, I mean, there was a lot of people at that time that didn't have a lot of experiences with Black people. So I was their experience with Black people. I hadn't had a lot of experience with white people, but it allowed me to have those experiences. And as you mentioned, had you have not gone to that school, you probably wouldn't be a rabbi today. Mm-hmm. Had I have not had those unique experiences of meeting all the diversity and all the people and having to understand how similar we are, I probably would not have ever gotten involved in, or even thinking about being an interfaith minister. You know, because the whole thing is about understanding all the different religions, all the different people. And when you break it all down, the one thing that I've realized in life is that 99.9% is really the ruling factors. You know, we all want to be loved. We all want to be understood. We all want to feel like we're accomplishing something. We all want that connectivity. And it's just a matter of taking time to understand each other to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Because we are the same.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone wants, you know, everyone's happiness. We want fulfillment. We want to make a difference. Like it's all, you know, it's true. And that's, I guess what always just baffled me about it is how do people come to such levels of hatred, just because someone is different, looks different. You know, the funny thing that's always just baffled me is when we talk about something like anti-Semitism, which unfortunately is rearing its ugly face in the world in many ways, because, okay, yeah, so I walk around with a yarmulke, you know I'm Jewish, but a lot of times you can't tell the difference between a Jew and a Gentile, right? And Jews look all different ways, right? There are Jews of color, there are Jews of, you know, Middle Eastern Jews have very dark skin, there's Asian, like, you know, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of you can't physically stereotype Jews so well, even though many have tried, yet, because a different religion, right? Different religion, I hate him, right? I hate her because you know, they have a national homeland and there's some conflict over there, I hate them, right? But it's just, you know, it's crazy. And you know, like you said, so then you go over to the racial divides, and it's like very finite differences of DNA or chromosome or whatever it is that make the difference, and still it leads to so much hatred. It's crazy.
You know, there's a lot of people that probably don't know, because I just figured this out a couple years ago that there's Black Jews?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because there's, I guess, just to oversimplify a little bit, there's essentially two different categories, if you will, of Black Jews. Number one, and I do a lot of history writing, and I write for a history journal. And my next article for a journal I write for is going to be on the Ethiopian Jewish community, which dates back 2,500 years. And back to King Solomon, probably, is when they say it dates back to, when he had his interaction with the Queen of Sheba. And so you've had a Jewish community in Ethiopia, which is part of Africa, for those who don't know geography, and for 2,500 years. And there are plenty of people today. I have a friend here in Cleveland who is from that community. I mean, the community has now completely immigrated to Israel. They're not in Ethiopia anymore. They're all in Israel. But it's very much an African Jewish community. And right here in Cleveland, I only know one lady here in Cleveland, but you go to Israel and it's a big community. So you have that. Oh, and by the way, just one thing that this spawned off what we're doing here is this friend of mine. Her name's Chaya Mayan, who's from the Ethiopian community in Israel. So we're having her do a program with our high school kids coming up. Same reason. Now she's part of the community, she's part of the organization, because everyone knows her, but just to speak about what she and her kids have experienced here in America and in Israel for sure with racism as a Jew, but as a Black Jew. And that's another program that we're doing for our high school kids with her coming up. But beyond that, you can always convert to be, people can convert to be Jews. While Judaism is not a proselytizing religion, we do accept converts, and therefore there's right here in Cleveland, there's several families, of Black families who have converted to Judaism. And so, there's even some famous Black Jews. There's some Rod Carew, the baseball player, converted to Judaism, and Sammy Davis Jr. converted to Judaism. So there, you got a few out there of even famous Black Jews. So,
we're all the same.
Yeah, I like to say LeBron James is Jewish. He's not, but we like to say he is. But it's a little bit of a joke. But he was actually heavily taken in by the Jewish community in Akron when he was growing up. We all know the story about LeBron, whether you love him or hate him here in Cleveland. I think after he won the championship, a lot of people forgave him, and even though he left again, it wasn't the same as the first time. But when he was growing up in Akron, he did not have a father. He was being raised by a single mother, and he was able to go to St. Mary, St. Vincent. Which one is it? Whatever. Basically on a basketball scholarship, and it was an all-white school, and he was really taken in by the Jewish families there. Even though it was a Catholic school, there were Jewish families there, and they became like his family. So much so that today I have a very good friend. They've since moved from Akron to Cleveland. The Stein family, who LeBron until this day calls him Papa. And he's a I don't know, 40, he's probably 50, he's 55-year-old Jewish guy from Akron, right? So well, LeBron's not Jewish. We'll take him.
That's the love that I'm talking about. That's secure to home.
Yeah.
Secure to home.
And that's what blows my mind, why throughout history the relationship between the Jewish and the African American community has waxed and waned, because it shouldn't be like that, but it's been like that, and I've never really understood why. So I was talking about we've done a lot of talking recently with anyone and everyone about what's going on, and we have an organization here in the Jewish community called the Community Relations Council, and the point is to essentially to reach out to other communities, to have good relationships with the Jewish community and other parts of the community. And a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, was the recent chair of this organization, and he's his term has ended. And he was telling me about some of the work under his time as chair with the Black community here in Cleveland. And he said the message that they got quite often here in Cleveland was that the Black community doesn't distinguish the Jewish community in any ways. You're just a bunch of rich white guys, right? That's at least was the message they got. And it was very eye-opening to them to say, no, not all Jews are rich, right? I'm not. And that as Jews, Judaism is more than a religion, and we consider a nationality. We do consider an ethnicity, not necessarily an ethnicity that looks different per se, but we do consider ourselves a national people. That Judaism is our religion, but we do consider ourselves very much like I always have the question when you have to fill out these different papers and they ask for race or ethnicity. So if I'm feeling cute that day, I'll often write in Jewish. It always upsets people, but because from our perspective we are. But it's not when you can see or feel. So Eric, I want to switch subjects for a minute, just because I want to get to know you a little bit more better. And I want anyone watching to get to know you. Tell me a little bit more about just how you got to where you are in life. And we've shared a few stories, but how did you become a personal trainer? Your family, where's your family? Is your family all here in Cleveland? Just a little bit more about you personally.
I grew up in foster homes until I was 9 years old. My mother was, she had a lot of her own issues, some mental issues and so forth. And so she gave birth to me when she was in a home for unwed mothers. She was 16 years old. I immediately went into the foster care system. I was in a couple different foster homes, and then I was adopted, luckily, when I was 9 years old. I was adopted by a single white homosexual male. Moved from the ghetto into University Heights. And I always had this complex, like I wasn't good enough for a long time. And it probably, I had a lot of self-loathing, a lot of self-hate. And when I was probably 18 years old, was the first time I ever went to the gym. And from the moment that I picked up a weight, it was the first thing in my life that I felt like that I had control over myself. Like I could shape some form of me. Like my physical being was something that I had control over, because I never felt like I had control over anything. And so I immediately fell in love with working out, and it immediately became my therapy. It gave me a way of understanding myself. It gave me the means to physically get out some of my anger, some of my frustrations. It allowed me to realize that I could push myself further than I could push myself. So it kind of helped to calm and shape my mind. And from my experience, because really all we can teach is what we know. That's what we're the most proficient at, teaching other people. And since it was such an altering thing in my life, I figured out how to kind of put some things together to show other people through working out and help them to get the same benefits that I got. So that's how I became a personal trainer. And from personal training and really dealing with people, because I always believe that the body can only respond. So really the issue is always in our mind. Mm-hmm. So if we can understand our mind, then we can shape everything that happens in our reality. Because our mind determines reality. Our mind tells us if we believe that we're good, if we're bad, and then we have all this shadow stuff that we bring from what happened years ago and weeks ago when we judge ourselves. And so I really started getting into that, and that, from working with people, personal training, it allowed me to have faith in myself, and also to realize that I would be more effective as a mindset coach. Because again, all the body can ever do is respond. The issue is always in the mind. All of our fears exist in the mind. All the things that limit us exist in the mind. And so then I got into mindset coaching, and then I realized that the most powerful piece of us is our spirit. Somebody once told me that we're trivalent individuals, meaning that we have three sources of power: mind, body, and spirit. And the way that it works is our spirit basically sees what's supposed to happen. Our mind's job is to figure out a plan to make that happen. And the body is basically a means of transport so that can happen. So the spirit is the most important thing. So I realized that if my goal was to empower and to elevate and to help people understand themselves, I'm missing the most important part of that. And that is the spiritual component. So that began my journey formally, because I think that from the time we're born, we're always on the same journey. It's just that we realize certain milestones. Right. So I think that started that milestone for me as far as becoming an interfaith minister. And so now the goal is to put all those three sources of power, or to help people to put all those three sources of power together, because ultimately it's like a three-legged stool, I think. You know, if one of the legs is imbalanced, if one of the legs is weaker than the other, it doesn't sit right. So that's how, long story short, that's how I got to where I am today.
Wow.
And it's been an amazing journey, you know, and just back to the whole love thing for me, every foster home that I was in, when I was adopted, all the issues I had with my adopted father, for most of my life, I looked at it as how unfortunate I was and how nobody loved me. Because again, it's all perception. Then one day it occurred to me that how loved I really was, because this stranger opened up their world to me, gave me their private time, cared about me, nurtured me, fed me. This other person did the exact same thing. And then this man who could have just gone on about his business saw something in me and said, I want to nurture this young Black male. And he invested in me.
Wow.
So, you know, again, perception. I was loved, not because I had to be loved. A lot of times you're loved by your family because you have to be. The world opened its arms out to me and carried me to safety.
Wow. Wow. So you were just in Detroit visiting your sister and your nieces, was it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I actually, over the years, probably about 15 years ago, I went looking for my biological mother. And she had passed since then, but I found that side of her family. About 4 years ago, I actually found my father, my birth father, and met a lot of relatives on that side. And through all of that, I made a great connection with a couple of my sisters. Like we've known each other forever type of connection.
Wow.
So I feel very blessed by that. And my one sister, I was down helping her take care of her I was taking care of my nieces and nephews. And, you know, it's God is truly good. And everything has a purpose and everything has a meaning and everything happens right on time when it's supposed to.
Yeah. No, 100%. Wow. Wow. You know, I think you're my new Oprah. I know you know what I'm talking about, because we figured out we're both big Tony Robbins fans, and Tony always tells Oprah's story and how, you know, she was a lady who had all the reasons to hate and all the reasons not to succeed and all the excuses, and how she just at some point was able to pick herself up and become one of the most powerful, successful, and helpful women in the world. And you know, that's you're my new Oprah example now.
But I always think though that I'm no different from anybody. Oprah's no different from anybody. You know, we're all the same. So a lot of what happened with me was just a matter of looking in here. And I think one of the biggest problems is that most of us don't spend time looking in here. We spend too much time comparing ourselves to everything out there, blaming everything out there, you know, putting our solutions out there. And that's why it's so easy to hate sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, it's so easy for me to say. And one of the things I was thinking about the other day is that a lot of times when I hear people complain about money issues or why things are the way they are economically, it's always because of the Jews. And a lot of times I hear that, you know, the reason that everything is messed up and there's so much violence in the world is because of the Black people. You know, it's always something out there. But if you look at every Black person has the responsibility to look within themselves to see what they can do to forgive all the injustice that has happened, to move forward, and to be a vehicle of love.
Right.
Every Jewish person has that exact same responsibility. Every Christian, everybody has one responsibility, and that's to take responsibility for themselves and that question and ask themselves, what can I do today to be a vessel of love, to show the world where to go and how to love? If I love you, then you understand what it feels like to be loved. And it's easier for you to love somebody else.
Yeah, it's true. I'll tell you an interesting Jewish idea that the Hebrew word for love is ahava. And the way the Hebrew works is like any language, I guess, that the roots, every word has its root, and then the words are formed around that. So the root of that word ahava is hav, which means to give. So from a Jewish perspective, of the word love, that the root of love, the whole idea of how you have love, how do you love? You love by giving, not by taking, by giving, right? That's how you have love in this world. You give to others. So yeah. Wow, Eric, this is you've blown my mind with your life story over here. This is awesome. I saw you have a talk that you give, the Black Swan, something. I messed up. It's a book you wrote, I think.
Yeah, the Swans Love the Sunlight.
Right.
Which is a book of affirmation short stories and poems.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And it's all just inspirational. You open it up each day and kind of see what you come up with, and have that be your leading thought to help set your intent for the day.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've written a couple books, right? You've written like 3 or 4 books, yeah.
Yeah, I wrote some fitness books. Who's eating who, and it's all based off of stress eating.
Yeah.
Deliberate self-dialogue, because I believe that what you tell yourself, words are so powerful. You are what you tell yourself.
100%.
Whatever you put out into the world is what you manifest. And then I wrote an autobiography that is called Unbroken Wings, which kind of it was more of a healing process, and just kind of like my way of just getting out everything that I experienced. I think that's the other thing, is a lot of times we go through experiences and we develop guilt and shame from them because we hold on to them and we make them about us. But again, I don't think anything we ever experience is about us. It's so we have unique experiences to share and to help somebody else heal.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole healing thing, like to give. And so I want to be transparent. Anything that I've ever experienced, if I can share it with you, what we'll find out is that you've been through something similar. The circumstances may have been different, but ultimately the lesson is the exact same.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And it's the famous quote that Tony always says from Nelson Mandela. I think it was the one who originally said the quote, but it's that our circumstances don't define us. We define our circumstances.
Yep. Very true.
And it's look, and he's a man who, how many years he spent in jail? Like, how terrible was his life? The day he got out of jail, his wife left him. I mean, it was a crazy story what that man went through in his life. And but he said, I'm going to define these circumstances. I'm not going to let them define me. I'm not going to let them chunk me up and make me not the person that I want to be. So
I'll have choices.
Yeah, exactly. Eric, this has been a blast.
I absolutely agree. I was thinking earlier today, is this ever going to happen? Because, my circumstances, I had to put it off. But again, I believe everything happens exactly when it's supposed to. So, this happened right on time.
Right. So it's awesome. So we're going to, I'm going to do this again. I mean, we'll talk offline when the Zoom recording isn't going anymore, and we'll figure out, how often we want to do this and how we want to get it out there. But I think that, for anyone who's watched this long, whatever, it's a half an hour, 40 minutes or so, that I hope, you'll be inspired, first of all, by this wonderful man here with us. But beyond that, just what we're doing, just trying to get to know people who are different than us, not that different, but who appear to be different. And because it's, all the big wigs and the politicians in Washington, D.C. and in Columbus and wherever, going to be talking about all kinds of policy changes and this and that needs to happen. That's maybe or maybe not that'll affect change, but change will be affected by people just getting to know each other, by grassroots efforts, by having conversations, by getting out there and saying, hey, how you doing? Let's just sit down and have a cup of coffee and let's just talk about life. So
absolutely.
That's what we're doing. So hey,
it's been a blast.
It's been a blast. Eric and I are going to talk and figure out when to get another one of these out to you, hopefully soon. Until then, everyone, just be well and keep on loving.
It's your life. Get to living.